Okay, so yeah, this thing is a great script for automatic UVs based on hard edges. Really, really fast and easy for unwrapping. And this is something called Golden Crop. What this does is it basically gives you a whole bunch of different styles of composition that you can use. So it gives you spirals, golden ratio based spirals, golden ratio based triangular compositions, as well as evenly divided rule of thirds, and also um, golden ratio rule of thirds. So I'll show you how this works. So I've basically gone to download and clicked on the beta version. I've downloaded it and unzipped it, and I'm going to go into Photoshop. So you have to open this script. So I'm going to just copy the location while I'm in here. Okay, so I'm going to go to New File, and you want to go to the Film and Video section. For us, we're primarily working in HD. Well, we kind of call it like HD TV, or it's close to 2K, which is a cinema format. The proper Cinema 2D, the proper Cinema 2K format is a little bit wider than HD TV, but it's kind of loosely interchangeably used as 2K, 4K. And anyways, in this case, we're just going to go with 1920 by 1080. And what's cool about this is if you go to File, Scripts, Browse, we're going to browse to that location of where that script is. I'm going to grab that golden crop. It's going to pop this open. I usually like to just turn all of these on. And so what this is going to do is, we could say all golden spirals or select all as well. You can do that. Say OK to this, and it's literally going to kind of create a number of layers that are kind of like, they're sort of like vector-based lines. And so you get every possible combination of maybe not every possible combination of composition, but you get quite a few. Okay, so I'm going to just select on this and hit escape. I usually wind up hitting escape because then it's going to kind of place all these down. So I'm going to just go through them quickly and show you some of the differences. So you'll kind of pick one that you like. This is the golden ratio. Golden ratio, by the way, is sort of like a, I don't know, some people think it's like a magic number in the universe or something, but I think it's just kind of an expression of the rules or whatever of the universe. So people say, oh, you sort of naturally see the golden ratio occurring where the ratio is, let's say if you have a length of 1, the next section of that would be 1.6 times bigger. And you can sort of divide up a square that way, or let's say you're starting at 1.6, you're getting a smaller ratio of 1, and so you can kind of keep breaking down an image. So a lot of patterns like spiral galaxies, spiral kind of plant growth, flowers, leaves, can follow that, seashells, right, kind of follow this spiral proportion. So pretty interesting, I guess, in some ways, right, that there is this kind of organic, reoccurring pattern. And also, people use it to measure faces. And now this is, again, I don't agree with this. There's like golden ratio, like face proportions, which again I don't think are quite accurate in terms of appeal. But there are a few different researchers who have come up with this idea of the ideal face. So you can put the same face on pretty much male or females with golden ratio kind of angles and proportions, and like Tom Cruise's face would fit in here just like Angelina Jolie or Brad Pitt or whatever. But okay, so anyways, that's the golden ratio rule of thirds. So it's not a perfectly even division of thirds horizontally and vertically. It's that ratio of 1 to 1.6, and then going the opposite way, left to right, top to bottom. This is the traditional, more even rule of thirds. Okay, and then we have diagonal or triangular compositions. Is like a diagonal, diagonal rule of thirds. Okay. Then there's triangular golden ratio, and then they're kind of going in different directions. So you can kind of have them based this way. And then, of course, we got all the varieties of golden spiral. Okay, so I tend to often just stick with the rule of thirds, but sometimes, too, what happens is you organically create additional compositions within the composition. So you might stick to a spiral or a rule of thirds, but then you'll sort of notice that maybe you'll have sort of secondary compositions that kind of crop up. So I'm going to go to flatten image. So when you pick the one you like, you just make that one visible. Right click, go to flatten image. I'm going to discard the other layers. And for this to kind of work well, I usually will basically copy this layer. So I'm going to hit Control A to copy everything, Control C to copy my actual layer. And then I'll go into channels. So I basically want to make this an alpha, and I'll show you why in a minute, but I'll create a new channel which will pretty much become the alpha channel of this image. And I'm going to activate this by clicking on the eyeball icon and hit Control V to paste that in. So what that's going to do, and I should reverse this, so I'm going to hit Control I, which will invert this selection. So if we just turn off RGB, what's happening is the mask portion, sorry, I should say the black area will be invisible in Maya, and the white area is what we're going to see within our viewport. And for the layer itself, because I'm really only concerned with the alpha, I'm going to go to layers, and I really just need to make this be kind of like a blank canvas, essentially. So I'm going to just turn off my alpha view for a second, click on RGB, and then hit Control Backspace. So this is going to just be a flat white image. I'm going to go to Save As. I don't want to save any layers, but I do want to save an image that has an alpha, so that's fairly important. And for now, I'm just going to work out of my D drive until I set something up here. So you want either a PNG, a TIFF, or a Targa. I usually go with Targas for Maya because Maya and Targas are almost the same age, I would say. They go back like 25, 30 years. So this is going to be my, I'm just going to call it golden ratio, or yeah, GR_grid is fine for me. It's a good idea to start naming things in ways that kind of make sense. And I'll create a new scene. I'm also going to go to File, Set Project, so I know, yeah, I'll double click on this and hit Set. And I also want to copy this because I'm going to have to put my image in here as well. So go to Set. And I'm going to just move that image over to that folder. So I'll copy this or cut it. And if you go into Source Images, paste that in, this should basically work. So next up is to kind of create a camera. So I'll usually go to View, Create Camera from View. There's a nice shortcut, Control-Shift-C. And right away you want to rename this. So you want to go to the actual transform node, and we'll call this cam_scene. Usually I do underscores instead of blank spaces because sometimes if you have files that are saving over a network, blank spaces can be relabeled some random set of characters. Usually it's like a percentage sign and something else potentially. So this won't be an issue in your case, but it's kind of a good habit to get into when you're naming files and also naming things within your files, is to put underscores in. Don't leave just empty spaces. Okay. Hit enter. I want to make sure I'm looking through my cam scene. Okay, so there's that. Next up, you want to go into the render settings and go to Arnold. Sorry, not Arnold. Under Common, I should say. We'll go to the resolution here. I want HD 1080. Hit close. So then in the render options here, there's a little thing called film gate. So that's kind of showing you what the virtual camera is going to see, and it's on gate mask. I want to set this to resolution gate so I actually get my true HD proportions. Also, I find like when you render or do previews, it's going to kind of create this huge mask. So you can turn off the mask if you want. I usually also don't like my renders and previews and stuff to be cropped. It's usually the play blast that get cropped. So in this case, I'm going to go to Cam Scene Shape and scroll down to Display. And if we set this to under Overscan, Display Options Overscan, set it to 1 and hit Enter. And now you won't have any kind of like wasted space or borders around your scene for your actual camera. So again, some important options. And you can turn the gate back on if you like. It's not a gate mask back on. It doesn't necessarily matter, but just to show you, if I have, let's say, a really large object in here and I zoom in, I believe the gate mask will kind of like obscure it a bit. So And I should, yeah, make sure I'm on resolution mask. Resolution gate there. Okay, so I'll go back. If that does change, you do have to go back to your camera and reset the overscan to 1. So set that to 1. Okay, another little thing. So I'm going to click on the cam scene and go to View, Image Plane, Import Image. And I'm going to select my grid. Okay, open. And yes, I should see the. Yes, I'm not seeing the line show up, so I'm going to just double check. I'm going to say fit to resolution gate, so that's another thing. Let me just double check my actual settings here. So sometimes you may have to make sure that the alpha. Oh, this is something I did by accident. You see, I cleared the alpha actually over here. So let me just make sure that's enabled, and I'll resave it just to make sure it is set properly. Where's that location? I think it's here, yeah? Okay, and I think I set it as a Targa, so I'm going to just save over that. Say OK to that. And then I'll go to image and just make sure this is reloaded. So now once that's loaded, you'll see this nice grid right in your camera view. So you can start to align and start to block out and lay out your scene so that you know, you have good framing, good composition. Okay, so that's really, really useful. Like I said, the one thing I do like to do is, again, you want to make sure you're just on RGB. And if you go to layers, you can actually kind of clear that. Let me turn off the visibility so we see that the alpha still has its kind of thing. It's masking enabled, and then this is just blank, because otherwise you'll kind of get kind of a little halo white outline here. So for me, that's just a little thing I like to do to kind of clean things up. And if I just reload, I believe, yeah, it's not really making too much of a difference, but that's okay. Oh, maybe it didn't finish saving here. So yeah, let's try that again. So now you'll see that, you know, these lines are white. So if you were to change this too, you could also, again, just for your own, you know, personal options, you could always like pick a color and say, you know, make it red or whatever. It doesn't really matter. But again, if you have a preference for that, you could always do that too. Right. So again, if you kind of reload it, it'll come out red. Also, you can set the alpha gain so it can be nice and faint as well, so it's less distracting. Right, so you can kind of dial that down so it's a little more subtle. Okay. Next up, what I usually like to do is kind of start to figure out my scene. So I'll go to, since this is interior, I'm going to basically create a box and go into the channel box under inputs. And you want to start to think about the height. So the height of this thing, I would say most rooms are typically 8 to 12 feet high, depending. So if I'm going 12 feet high, I would set this to whatever 12 times 30 is, which is what, 360, I think? 360 centimeters. Oops, that's divisions, not a good thing. Height 360. So again, I'll pull my camera wider just to start to accommodate that. And then maybe for depth, I'll set this to 600 and width maybe to 800. Again, I can figure out the mathematics of that a bit later on. Additionally, too, it's useful to kind of have the home grid be visible. So you can go to display, click on the grid options, and then set this to like 500 units and grid lines every 100 units and hit apply. So now we can see kind of a much larger real world scale grid. I also like to go into bonus tools, modeling, and bonus tools, modify. 0 pivots, move pivot to base, and 0 values. So that will kind of allow me to see this box and sort of place it hopefully at ground level. Okay, so another trick. So when you're, let's say this is roughly our room, I will also go to mesh display and go to reverse. And then under shading, we can turn on this thing called backface cull. So now you're actually literally looking right through the walls. So we're not, we're able to cleanly and clearly see our room, but we still have all the walls intact. Typically, though, what I will do is select and delete usually one or two walls, depending on how you're framing things. So if you're going more like, let's say, center framing, you can delete the center frame there and then sort of position like so, okay? So that's okay. It just depends on the composition that you're going to have. So I'm going to delete this wall. And again, I can maybe line the corner of the wall up with my rule of thirds here. Something else to mention too is, so let me just go back to object mode. So yeah, let me just double check that this is set properly. So bonus tools, modify, move pivot to base, and 0 local values. Okay, so this thing is just slightly off the ground. So I like things to be nice and tight to the home grid, to the ground, because I can very easily create additional objects now, right, that are kind of grounded to the ground. Something else I will mention too is that the camera, let's go to the attribute editor, the focal length typically on interior shots is, it can be rather wide or rather, meaning that the focal length is let's say really, really low. This is extreme, right? So usually it's like between I would say 12, right? This is extreme perspective here, 12 and 35. But 35 is your default camera in Maya. So every time we see 35, it looks very kind of boring in a way. So I would recommend if you're doing a wide angle, set it to like 28 or lower. What will happen is it'll make the space feel much, much bigger, and objects will feel further and further apart. So you can use that as part of the psychology of the framing of your scene. It makes the scene, again, it can either make it feel like very first person perspective wise, but then it also makes objects further apart. In a lot of films too, like the shots are kind of flat, and they do that by actually pulling the camera way far back and shooting with a long lens. So what that does, and I'll just put a basic object in the scene here. I'll go to window, content browser. Yeah, let's just put what do we have, people here? No, I don't want one of those. Do I want? Yeah, why not? I'll drag one of these in here. Okay, so there's our character, and then maybe I'll just put like a little stool or something. And then we'll put something over here. So this is just to show you the difference. This is with the camera here. This is at 28 mil, and if you go to 12, right, that stool feels much further away from the character. In film, a lot of times things are flattened or compressed by having a higher focal length. So that means things look flatter. There's less perspective. So that could be anywhere from like an 85 mil to 100 mil lens, and you see the space feels more intimate, more close. So again, when we're doing interior stuff, it tends to be people interacting, and so we want people to feel more close. You can also use it to an extreme to make things feel claustrophobic. So things become more and more on the same plane, meaning that it feels like there's less of a middle, foreground, and background. Okay. So again, you can make things feel claustrophobic, or you can make things feel disorienting by going to more of a wide angle, or maybe out of reach as well by making the space look larger than it is. So again, it's good to think about these things and to consider the framing choices. Also, right, a low angle lens will be kind of like bug's eye view. And I might turn off my back face cull because I want to see if I go through the floor or not, right? And we also, if you're at a higher angle, this kind of puts the viewer in the sort of a position of power. God's eye view, bird's eye view can kind of feel very dominating for that sort of scene, okay? So it's something to kind of think about when you're positioning your camera, okay? Just a few other things I'm going to show. When it comes to blocking, we don't have to have... how do I put it? We don't have to do super detailed modeling. So this for a stool is totally fine, okay? You know, if you wanted to add a little bit of detail, I'd go very, very basic. So let's say I'm starting, if I'm happy with the focal length, I'm happy with the, so let me just check this. I'm starting to be okay with the framing of the scene, let's say. And also if the camera, by the way, is roughly at eye level or with the character, then there's equal footing between the viewer or the camera, the direction, the director, you, the cinematographer, and the subject matter, then you're on equal footing, okay? So it's sort of more of an equal relationship. So I kind of like this actually kind of flattening effect. I think I like the framing. And so I might, put something over here. So what I'm going to do with the camera is just simply click on the lock icon on the viewport so we can lock the camera down. And then we want to switch. Before we switch, I'm going to go tear off a copy of this. So I have a little viewer of that. And I like to kind of make it thumbnail size so I get a decent impression. I'm just going to turn up the heads-up display for the poly count. I don't need that there. So it's always good to kind of look at a thumbnail size of what's happening in your scene, because I think it gives you the right impression of what's important, what is maybe cluttering or can be added to the scene. Okay, a couple other things for blocking. I'm going to do this rather quickly, but you can go into XYZ rotate, translate, scale, and just right-click this and lock it. That is somewhat useful. Alternatively, I don't know if you know this, but you can create layers. So I can create a new layer, and then I would right-click and say Add Selected Object to the layer. And what's great about that is that you can go into T, which is kind of like a transparency mode, or R, which is a reference mode, meaning I can't click on that object. So I'll call this room underscore, or maybe just ref for reference underscore room. Again, usually it's a good idea to kind of start with a broad category for naming, like references, templates, character mesh. So you'd say CHR for character underscore the character name. Okay. So what's kind of cool is, like, instead of just clicking on a cylinder and have it kind of pop up in the scene here, what I like to do is switch to create polygons and turn on interactive creation. Okay. So what's cool about that is that if I select the room reference and go to the magnet icon, now when I go to, let's say, create, and I'll just pop this off here, this little menu, so you can float that menu as well. So you can go create, let's say, a torus. I can left click and drag now, and it shows up on the wall. Okay? And then I can drag for the radius. So now there's a mirror. Okay, so maybe I'll put that mirror at this level. And that's going to be oriented to the wall. Pretty sweet, right? Let's say for this. So I'm in, I think, perspective. Let me just make sure I'm in perspective now. Yeah, okay. So I'll start to edit this and extrude. Control E, extrude. There we go. And then just do, let's say, an offset. So again, it doesn't have to be like the final edition of this mesh. It's just like a very rough idea of what is happening in the scene. Oops. Oh, and live is still on, so why don't I just turn off the magnet icon for a minute and just get that set up properly. So again, I still got that camera view open, right? Always good to have that maybe on a second screen. So let's say I want to do something else. I'll turn, usually what I'll do, because I've got this locked in a way, I can't, select it, but I'll just click on room reference, ref room. So if it's in reference, you want to just go to the outliner to actually select it to be able to draw on the surface. Turn your magnet icon back on. And we'll go back to create, and let's say I'll go to cube. Yeah, and then if I left click and drag, you see it creates a cube over on this side, and then I click again to drag that out. Now it's not even visible in the shot, so I would say, okay, well, maybe we'll put that over here. So let's say this is like a cafe or something, okay? Yep, so when you scale it, it's actually scaling to the pivot point right up against the wall. I believe it should be. If not, that's okay. You can always just kind of manually adjust it after too. The point of this is to kind of work quickly and get a sense of the space. So yeah, I might just throw in, now in this case, I don't really recommend putting in like full characters because we don't have, we're not going to be sculpting that or modeling that, but I mean, you could kind of pop them in if you wanted to, I suppose, for your reference, but not necessary at all. So I'll go to content browser. Let me just import this guy. So again, kind of create a bit of an intimate space here, I guess, right? Putting them this close. And then again, I usually like to kind of consider the clutter or lack thereof. I like to kind of have things read in a certain way. So again, I'm kind of thinking about maybe eye lines here. And then, let's say I'm going to make, I'll go back to cube here and just kind of click and drag out, let's say like a counter kind of thing. So maybe it's like a barista situation. bartender, whatever. So again, I'll just kind of click, oops. Yeah, again, if your magnet icon is on and you try to extrude or move stuff, it'll just snap to the room. So just turn that off, and then we can do this. So again, if I want maybe, let's say, a corner, I'll pop this over here. And if, you know, maybe you want something specific in terms of the look, you can always do a little bit of extra modeling. It's not to say we don't have to do any good modeling. So maybe I'll take this face, and then I'm going to go to multi just to show you this little trick here. Select this face, then select the edge, and shift right click, go to wedge, and you'll get kind of a nice 90-degree turn. And then I'll just take this and extrude that over. Now again, I'm not even seeing it, so does it matter? I don't know. But me, I'll do the same thing over here, okay? So I'll do this, select the face, shift click on the edge, shift right click, go to wedge face. Then we've got kind of, again, a little kind of like food counter, whatever. And again, yeah, you know, like for tables, chairs, maybe I'm going to put a table here. I'll just build a very quick tabletop. Just build one leg and simply duplicate, right? So again, it's not about being complete and all that. It's just about kind of getting a sense of the space, and is the space kind of making sense? Is it right? Is it working? So I might just add a little. By the way, sometimes it's hard to see some of this stuff with the shading and everything that's happening. So sometimes I'll just pop on. There's a little ambient occlusion option you can actually add right here. Oh, sorry, that's default material. Sorry, right here. It's like a little sphere with a blue kind of shaded plane underneath, and that can help you in both windows to sort of better see the space there. Yeah, I think that's on. Okay, that's on in both. Right, so it just gives you a little more depth and dimension in the scene. Okay, I'm going to just extrude. Yeah, so maybe that's going to be, for me, like a window. Okay. So again, we can kind of make, you know, some really great decisions on the fly, which is nice. So let's say maybe I want this to be like a bigger mirror or whatever. See, I don't mind if you populate kind of roughly with some pre-made stuff, but you will be replacing it with your own assets, just so you know. So I'm going to just bevel that edge just once with a very, very small amount. And the reason is I want to maybe make a wider sort of mirror of this. So I'm going to just take that edge and slide it over, right? Yeah, so again, we're just going super basic. So I can use that same trick where let's say I click on this kind of counter, whatever. Click on magnet and then go into the cylinder here and drag and draw out a little, you know, maybe it's cups or bottles or whatever. Okay. Again, I want to make sure, does it make sense with the space in the scene? Now you can cheat too. That's the other kind of great thing, is that you can kind of cheat the positioning of things as well. That's how they make Tom Cruise look like a normal sized human being. They just have him closer to the camera. Bro's a midget. Sorry, that's not an appropriate word. I shouldn't say that. Oh, and yeah, don't forget to turn off your magnet, because it'll snap again in weird ways if you're moving stuff around. So again, if you have, you know, maybe there's like a little, I don't know, a couple little like, what am I going to select? Yeah, I'll select the room again. Yeah, like I said, normally I would have a bunch of these windows off to my second screen, but for this recording, I'm kind of jamming everything in here. But I'll turn the magnet back on, and then I'll just do another kind of, let's say we have, oops, did I not make this live? Let's make that live. Oh, I'm on the camera, sorry. Make live, there we go. Okay, and then we'll go to this, and we'll just make a little, oops. Again, make sure it kind of makes sense. And you can make these live as well, so I'll turn off live, and with that shelf selected, I'll make that live, and then we'll just do a little okay, so again, very, very basic modeling. It's all about kind of like set decorating and getting a sense of the space, as I said. So, oops, turn off the magnet icon again. Okay, so that's, these shelves are a little bit short, so maybe my bottle's a little bit big. So if you hit, by the way, Control D, move that off and go Shift, oops. This is very sensitive, by the way, so let me just double check that that's working okay. I'll usually just go to Soften Edge or Mesh Display, Soften Harden. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to hit Control D. You got to be very precise with this, and then Shift D, Shift D, Shift D will give you that. So then we can take these things. Again, you don't have to go this far, but I like to just kind of get a sense of realism. So I'll go to Bonus Tools, Modify, Randomize, and let's randomize the scale. Okay. You can also randomize rotation. I don't know if we want to do that necessarily, but translation maybe as well. And you can set, I think the vertical is Y, so you can set that to 0 so that they're not all sitting at the exact same you know, kind of depth, and things kind of shift around as they're used. Okay, so then you can just kind of clone that 1 or 2 times. And, you know, maybe I'll just get rid of the other shelf as well. Okay, so we get a sense of this being whatever, trendy little location, let's say. Whoop, what's going on there? I'll double click my move tool and also just reset this. I think I want it to just move as kind of a group here. And by the way, if you have things that you know are kind of locked in place now, you can take this and say right-click, add to reference layer. So that means I won't be able to select it by accident and move it around. So, you know, this thing is set. I'm going to right-click and say add selected to reference. So then I can't grab that stuff by accident. You know, I think my character's here, add selected.